Before we get to one of the most debatable topics that I have on the website, best players, best teams that ever come through, I want to talk to you about the merger of Roosevelt and Washington and get your feelings on that. I know as a player of East Chicago Central, my feelings is that I felt like when they merged the schools, a lot of scholarships were trimmed down as far as the basketball. Because originally you had two teams, you had 12 roster spots. Now it's just 12 spots. When you heard about Washington and Roosevelt combining, what was your feelings on that?
Well, I agreed with you. I felt it's always better to have, a smaller school so more kids can participate. And when they merged, though, I think it had something to do also, though, with the population in East Chicago was gradually falling. There was no need for two schools to keep two schools operating. So I understand that point, too. When they merged, and I was reading all the articles, and I thought, everybody was talking about all the talent that's here in East Chicago, how many, and we're already counting the state championships that were going to be won. And the first thing I thought about, didn't they learn anything from Gary Westside? I mean, the same thing in 1970 or 71 1970 when they formed. Everybody was talking about how many state championships they were going to win, and look how long it took them to get one. And sure enough, history repeated itself where, not until 2007 did East Chicago get their first title.
Exactly. What is the difference between basketball in your era than basketball after you, 80s, 90s, and 2000s in East Chicago?
Well, I think back then we were just more skilled players. I think we were better shooters. We were better dribblers. We understood the game better. I think we were more fundamentally sound because I think fundamentals were stressed more. The kids nowadays are all dependent on their athleticism, and it's all relative. I mean, maybe the kids are better athletes nowadays, but there's better athletes at other schools, and I think that if the kids nowadays would work more on their fundamentals, they would be more successful and would get that ultimate goal, which would be a free education.
Gotcha. Now, one of the big topics is that who has the better team? 1970, East Chicago Roosevelt, 1971, East Chicago Washington. I want to get your feedback on that. I read an article in the newspaper in 2007. One of the guards from Roosevelt, Mike Artis, stated that you guys are the fan pick because you guys were more glorified with your careers after high school, but there's no way you guys are a better team because you couldn't stop Jim Bradley. So I want to get your feelings on that quote and also who you feel like is the better team.
Well, number one, I'm not going to say Roosevelt was better. We let's get that out of the way right now, okay? But I think it's just an honor that they can talk about two teams 40-some years later and still have this controversy. As far as trying to say, who would be the better team? No, we didn't have a player like Jim Bradley, and I could talk for an hour about how I feel about Jim Bradley, but I think that we had more weapons than they did. I think that our big guys weren't as big, but they were more skilled, and I think that it had been a hard matchup. I definitely think we were more dominant in the backcourt, and if you just look at what really happened, we lost those guys by 3 points when they were seniors, and don't forget we had another year of maturity, physical and emotional and mental maturity, and we were a better team in 71 than we were in 70 with basically the same guys. So, I got to believe that, if all said and done, if we all magically became the same age, we would have beaten that team. That's just my opinion. But as far as Marco Artis is concerned, I want to challenge him right now to meet me in Riley Park next Saturday at noon. And I'll be there, and let's just go one-on-one, and we can settle this right now.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, one of the hot topics is starting five. I want to get from you who is your all-time starting five, East Chicago history or Indiana. So let's hear it.
All right. Well, I'm going to do this. A couple things. First, I'm going to go with the guys before my time. And I got to do this, and I want to apologize to all the Roosevelt people because I was a Washington guy, so I'm going to miss some Roosevelt guys. But here's my starting five before: Ray Regelis, Nick Mattis, Bob Cantrell, Rich Mason, and Ron Diviak. That would have been my starting five before my era. After my era, this is my starting five. Or no, during my era. This is during my, okay. Reuben Bailey, Darnell Adell, Ulysses Bridgman, Tim Stoddard, and Jim Bradley. That would be my starting five.
Where do you fit in at?
I'm not there. Okay. My starting five after that, this will be Chicago Central. Ricky Wright, tremendous player. Willie Puckett. People don't know how good Willie Puckett is. I knew. I got a chance to coach Willie Puckett for 2 years at junior college, and he was an All-American. I'm going to put Tony Harris on that. Tony Harris is the kid that, had the consolidation been 1 year earlier, they could have played together with that team and went to the Final Four. Might have been something there. I got to put E'Twaun Moore there. E'Twaun Moore is the all-time leading scorer and rebounder in the history of Central High School. And I got to put a transfer in that popped in and just surprised me one day named Angel Garcia. And that's going to be my starting five. And then if I was going to pick an all-Indiana starting five, I don't know. I'd have to think about it a little more, but I got to tell you a little story. There was an all-Indiana starting five at one point. There was, and in the backcourt, there was Oscar Robertson and John Wooden. And then all of a sudden, in came Damon Bailey, and he set the all-time scoring record. So somebody was talking with Coach Wooden and said, Coach, you know this kid Damon Bailey, he's a pretty good player. And Coach said, I know. And he goes, well, Coach, you know, he just set the record for the most points. Coach said, I know. He says, Coach, he says he's 6'3", 190 pounds, 195 pounds. What were you when you played? 5'10", 170? He says, yeah. He says, well, you know, Coach, he says, there's rumor has it that maybe Damon Bailey deserves to be on that all-time starting five. And Coach said, well, you know what, that might be true. And Oscar's going to be real disappointed.
Give us a brief history on your coaching in the college ranks. And then also I want to kind of touch on your state championship run, 2007 East Chicago Central.
You know, I should be in the record book for coaching the most schools at the most level and never having to relocate. You know how people, coaches have to pick up and move their families. Well, I wasn't willing to do that. So I volunteered at Purdue Cal, NEI school in Hammond. Then I got the head coaching job at South Suburban Junior College, Community College. And I was there for 4 years. And then I got hired as an assistant coach. I wanted to try Division I coaching. And I got hired as assistant coach at Loyola University of Chicago. At that time, it just wasn't for me because my children were young, they were in school, and what happened was I was always on the road, I was always working, I was missing my children. I didn't see my kids' basketball game, my sons, I didn't see my daughter's tennis matches, and I knew I didn't want to miss that part of my life. So I emptied out of that profession, and then I went down to high school coaching. High school coaching was a little more difficult, dealing with the families and all that, the parents and all that. That was a very difficult thing. But I did that for 2 years, and then I took a couple years off, and then I was teaching here at East Chicago Central, and the superintendent at that time, John Flores, persuaded me to take the coaching job here at Central High School. So I took it in 2006, and we had a good year. We're 19-5, won a sectional. We did pretty good, but I wasn't really what I wanted to do. I wanted to give it up after that 1 year, but my wife talked me into keeping it. She said, you know, you got Kawan Short, you got E'Twaun Moore. Why not go out one more year with those players? You know you're going to have a good team. And she convinced me to keep it for 1 more year. So I decided to keep it, and then, like I said earlier, Angel Garcia transfers here. So all of a sudden, I'm thinking, we can win a state championship. And it was just a tremendous year. I had a bunch of good kids playing for me. We had a lot of fun. They worked hard. They had one common goal. We won a state championship, and then I resigned. I did what I wanted to do, but I had an opportunity to coach my son on the NAIA level, and at IU Northwest. I had 3 years with him also, and I just can't tell you how much fun I've had. I wish I could have stayed another year at Central, because I do believe we could have won back-to-back championships. But I couldn't pass up my coaching my son, because timing is everything. That opportunity wouldn't have been there the next year.
Gotcha. In 2011, you was inducted into the Indiana Hall of Fame. You're the second player in the state history to win as a high school player, winning the college ranks, and also as the head coach. One of the things that I get kind of upset about is that I feel like any athletes from the region don't get their due respect throughout the state of Indiana, as far as in the Hall of Fame, because I feel like you should have been in the Hall of Fame years ago. Can you give us some feedback on your thoughts about my opinion about the region athletes not getting the due respect?
Well, that's been the feelings of even these guys before, the older guys, the Ray Regellises and the Nick Manises. And so it's been an ongoing thing. But two things. I want to say that, I mean, it's established down in central Indiana. And I do believe that, they favor the other guys. But to their defense, that's just where they hear more of the names and everything. So we know all the names, we know what's going on up here, but they don't hear it all down there. Probably like even the northeast corner of the state. As far as getting into the Hall of Fame, I got to defend those guys back there because people don't know this. Everybody has the same response as you. It took you so long to get in.
Okay.
Well, I've been turning it down for numerous years.
Wow.
And you're gonna for two reasons. Well, for the main reason, I'm gonna tell you the main reason. Last Wednesday they not only inducted me into the Hall of Fame, but they inducted my team. Every undefeated state champions team after 40 years gets inducted into the Hall of Fame as a team, and that's an honor because as individuals it's just somebody's opinion, people's opinion. When you get inducted as a team, we earned it, and I did not want to go in without my teammates, and that was the main reason. But you're going to love the excuses I was given.
Okay.
The last excuse I gave, and it was the best one, it took so long for Jim Bradley to get in. And whenever they asked me, I said, you know what? I said, if the Hall of Fame, Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame, isn't good enough for Jim Bradley, it's not good enough for me. And I won't go in until you get him in. And they told me, they said, we're working on it. We're working on getting him in. And sure enough, they got him in last year, or the year before that, one of the two, I think it was last year. And then they called me right away and said, okay, remember what you said? You said that if we got Jim Bradley in, then you would come in. Are you coming in? Well, I knew it was the 4-year thing for the team, so I'm in.
Awesome. As you reflect on your whole career, as I stated before, undefeated season, Indiana Hall of Fame, second player ever to win, state championship, college, as well as a coach. What kind of advice can you give to future athletes who may one day be in your position, just about making the right decisions?
You go with your passion. Go with how your heart feels and what to do. And just, I made a lot of mistakes. I know that everything you're saying, it looks good. I made a lot of mistakes, but everybody makes mistakes. As long as you learn from those mistakes, then you're going to be okay. As far as all the accomplishments, I like I said, I went to Hall of Fame dinner. I'm not naive enough to realize that I couldn't have done this without a little help from my friends. So I was always with some great teammates. And when you think about, what I accomplished, I couldn't have gotten to UCLA without that 1971 state championship team. I couldn't have played for John Wooden without that 71 team. And I certainly wouldn't have been part of the greatest dynasty basketball's ever seen if it wasn't for those guys from the 71 Senators that helped me get there. As far as winning the state championship, basketball is a player's game. And it's always been, and it always will be. It was great to win it as a player. It wasn't as great as a coach, but it was great for those guys, and let's give them all the credit. I was at the right place at the right time, had a good group of kids, and we had some luck on our side also.
Mr. Trgovich, I want to thank you for being on Athletes Lives Network. It's been a pleasure getting your history, and I hope to see you again with a round table of other great players that will come through.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Athletes Lives Network, once an athlete, always an athlete.